forgot to take it off of loop. Hey guys, welcome to She Knows Arsenal. My name is Jessica. I'm your host. We are going to be talking about Declan Rice Day. Today was Declan Rice Day. We finally announced the signing. Arsenal finally announced the signing of Declan Rice, Jurrien Timber yesterday as well. So yeah, we're going to be talking about all of that as well as preseason starting and what's next for Arsenal in the transfer window. So make sure you guys like this video, subscribe to the channel, and let me know if you guys can see me and hear me. Yes, I am in a different location. If you've been here for a while, then you know where I am. I'm in California. So there you go. I'm going to the game on the 26th, and I'm also going to be doing some workout here. So this is where I'll be for like the next 2 weeks. So yeah, I did some pre-recorded content. You guys can check that out as well. I did the Jurrien Timber video as well as one for Declan Rice, where it's just a short kind of overview of what they will bring to Arsenal. So make sure you guys check that out after we do this live. But yeah, how are you guys feeling? How are you guys feeling? Let me get in the comments and let me know what you and read what you guys are saying. Mr. Gamer says, fire, fire, fire. Matt G says, let's go. Jasper says, vamos. Fadlala says, hi, Jess. Hello to you as well. C. Walder says, I got the Rice Baby advert before this stream. Sir Owen says, we're here, Jess. Yeah, big day for Arsenal Football Club. Mr. Bravo says, definitely started the day out right. Announcements gave me the feels. I hear you there. NG says, we need a better striker next. Mr. Bravo says, sound check. Mr. Bravo says, camera on. So yeah, as long as you guys can like see me and hear me, like it's probably not like the best quality, but like it's the best I could do like at the moment. You know what I mean? Let's see. Dr. Omezia says, I'm buzzing. I'm feeling like Declan Rice. I'm very glad that they used the song. I know people were complaining about that other song that they've been using for all the other announcements. I don't even know what the song is. Like, I really don't, but people were complaining about that song. I didn't really think it was as bad as people were making it out to seem, but I'm glad that they used the Declan Rice song because it was just perfect. It was just perfect. The Ed Reese says, damn, wrong day to have sweet potato. Giovanni says, best signing of the window. Paul Asante says, this is our season. I hope so. I mean, having the players that have already come in, and then knowing the players that we have already at the club and how close we got to winning the Premier League last season, it does feel like this is Arsenal's time to really push on and go back to the club that we were when we were at our best, when we were winning doubles and, winning the league and stuff like that. So it's definitely Arsenal's time, and hopefully, the players that we brought in will help get us over the line. Because I think we're close. I think we are close. Ash, thank you so much for your super chat. Says Rice signing is way bigger than I even thought. His interview was brilliant. Soft factors with Rice is just as important. He also loves Mikel. You know what I'll say about this is that, like, I think this is a very good experiment, or like, this is a very good example of, the way that players and people that actually play and work in the game view Arsenal. And it's different than how rivals and people on football Twitter and TalkSport view Arsenal. A lot of what the media says is built around engagement, sensationalism, and hype and stuff like that. And the fact that a player like Declan Rice would choose Arsenal, I think, is symbolic of what who Arsenal actually are in this moment versus the way the media sees Arsenal, especially off of the back of the season that we had last summer. People were trying to figure out why Jesus and Zinchenko would come to Arsenal because we had just missed out on top four. Surely no good player would want to come to Arsenal. They're going to be in Europa League, and they took a risk and came to Arsenal. And then this season, missing out on the Premier League, people were making it seem like Arsenal were finished. This was it. They would never get another chance. Yet and still, Declan Rice is in his interview saying that, he wouldn't come to Arsenal if he couldn't see Arsenal winning Premier Leagues and Champions Leagues. So I take more value from what players and other managers and people that actually work in the game think about Arsenal than the media, because we know what their their agenda is. You know what I mean? iGamer says, hello, everyone. Just keep Partey. Don't sell an experienced player. We'll talk about that in a second. Mr. says, Rice is very well spoken. I can see the players showing him respect straight away. Ash says, people in football know what Arsenal Mikel are. Twitter is not real life. Exactly. It's just one of those things where I think we take too much stock in what people whose job is to sensationalize things, versus actually who matter, which is, people like Saliba and Saka who have signed long-term contracts, contract extensions at Arsenal. If they thought Arsenal were the bottle jobs that everybody else thinks, they wouldn't sign these contracts. Declan Rice wouldn't be here. Jurrien Timber wouldn't be here. So it's just one of those things where I think it puts that stamp of like validity to like what we're trying to do. Obviously, you have to deliver on that. Like there is now almost like instant pressure for Arsenal to become that team that gets it over the line. But in this moment right now, I think Arsenal fans can be excited about the fact that the people that matter actually think that Arsenal are going in the right direction. That's all that really matters. Tony says, can the season start? I am ready. I'm excited as well. Andy said, Jeff, you guys are talking to each other. That's fine. Final results says this season, Arsenal have been so successful with the last transfers. Johnny says Rice is brilliant fit for Arsenal. Can't wait to see him hooking up with Saka, Jesus, and others. And yeah, I think, from a playing perspective, he definitely fits what Arsenal need. And I have spent a lot of time kind of like reading what different journalists have been saying about the position that Declan Rice will play at Arsenal, because we are going through somewhat of like a midfield overhaul. And, like, I think it's a little bit nerve-wracking or a little bit scary, because the midfield that we have, and Partey, Odegaard, and Xhaka, who's left, but he was a part of that midfield, was really solid, and the relationships were there, and it made sense. The balance was right. So to remove potentially two of those players from that starting 11 and that midfield that had all of that, that had that balance, it's like, okay, so what are we doing? And David Ornstein has been kind of like right on the pulse of this. And, he was saying that with the idea of the midfield overhaul is very much, driven by Declan Rice and Havertz playing together in that midfield. And that Declan Rice has always been seen as the number 6, and Kai Havertz was always looked at as like the 8, or, and I don't think that necessarily means that that's the only position that Kai Havertz will play, and that's the only way that we'll play ever. But I feel like it just kind of makes sense. Like in my mind, it makes sense because of the way Arsenal plays. I do think that we can have a midfield where Odegaard, Havertz, and Declan Rice exist. But the number 6 did kind of have to change, because I don't think Thomas Partey can play with Kai Havertz. So we're going to have to see how that all kind of meshes together. But it's really exciting. And that doesn't mean that Thomas Partey or whoever we bring in, if he were to be sold, won't also play in that 6 role. It's just, it looks like Arsenal and Arteta have a very clear vision of the direction in which Arsenal are going to go in. And it very much is like built around Declan Rice playing in that 6 role. So it's going to be interesting days ahead for sure. Wave says Gabriel Jesus and Havertz will switch the 9 position when Jesus drops deep. James Bitter says, hating the notion by rival fans saying because we've spent 432 million since 2021-22, we have to win the league or Champions League. No excuses or sack Arteta. It's, who cares? Like, I mean, that's kind of where I'm at. I mean, my whole thing with the whole putting this instant pressure on Arsenal because of how much we spent. My question is, do you rate the manager and do you rate the players? Because I only will accept the pressure if you're willing to say that you think Arsenal are one of the best teams in the league and they're favorites to win the title, because I don't have expectations of teams that I don't rate. So my expectations of Spurs is always to be bad, because I just don't rate Spurs. So, I'm not going to, even if they spend money, I'm not going to sit there and be like, yeah, I expect you to win the league. When they had Jose Mourinho, I did not expect them to win the league. When they had Conte. I did not expect them to win the league because I don't rate them. And so I think it's very disingenuous to have expectations of a team that you're not willing to say that you rate. You know, you don't think the players are very good. You think they're all overrated. So again, I'm willing to say Arsenal should be winning the league if you're willing to say that they're favorites because they're a good team. But who cares what rivals think? I mean, you do care because everybody cares what their rivals think. But I think what they think and what we know, are two different things, I think, so I focus on what I know versus what they think because my feelings on rivals are not always the best. So it's like, I get like rival, commentary on Arsenal is a lot of times driven by agendas. So it's not something that I hold very heavily or like very high. Like it's just not something that I think is like that important. Let's see what you guys are saying. KK4 says, hit the likes, guys and gals. Make sure you guys do that. Jeff Gold says, well done, Jess. Brilliant response to a stupid comment. I get why people get rattled by what rivals are saying, because it's just like, especially if you're in a situation where you're around rival fans all the time, like in your normal life, like you don't want the banter and, what they say does rattle you. And like, sometimes it rattles me too, but like, what we know is different. We know that Arsenal are going in the right direction. We know that we have a really good team and we know that we're very close. And this transfer window is super important because of how close we are. We are trying to close the gap on Manchester City. Like that is the goal. And so Arsenal need to increase that depth. They need more quality. They need more leaders. They need more personality. We know what we need. And so I'm more focused on that than rivals are never going to give us credit. I think when you just accept that even if we had won the league this past season, that they still would have found a reason why it didn't matter or wasn't real or whatever. Once you accept that, it's what they say doesn't matter as much. It'll always kind of matter, but to the extent to which you let it rattle you, that's up to you. Let's see. A Nun Told Legend says, thank you so much for your super chat, by the way, says, facts, that's what annoys me about the analysis from rivals, the fallacy in their argument of having expectations for a club that you ultimately think will do nothing is weird. And that's the thing. It's, you want your cake and eat it too. You want to be able to put expectation on Arsenal without actually having to give them any sort of credit or any sort of, any sort of like positive anything. You should be challenging, you should be winning at everything, but I don't think you will. And the problem with expectations is expectations are built on belief. And so you can't expect things from a club that you don't believe in, right? Or you don't believe have the capabilities to do something. And that's why I just don't take it very seriously. But as Arsenal fans, I do think that like when we talk to each other, we do have to be realistic about like actually what our expectations are and feeling comfortable, feeling like the team needs to be performing at a certain level. And I think next season we'll have plenty of conversations around this because, like the season will start soon. So we'll have these conversations in the near future. But the way that we speak about our team, I think we need to have higher expectations. Now, am I saying that means that we need to win the Premier League and the Champions League next season? No. Look how long it took Manchester City to win the Champions League. It takes a while. You kind of have to be in the mix, a couple of times before you win it. I feel the same way about the Premier League. It's like you are in the title race a couple of times and then you finally do it because you have that experience of not winning it. But we need to have the expectation of this team to perform to a very high standard every 4 days. They need to perform. I think a title challenge is a minimum expectation. Making sure that we retain our Champions League qualification is a minimum. And silverware. I think ultimately this team could do with some silverware because none of the players that we have now, except for a couple, but like Tierney, Rob Holding, might have been the only players that played significant roles in that FA Cup win for Mikel Arteta in his first season. So the players that we really love dearly, and Saliba and Saka, Martinelli, these guys, they haven't won anything with Arsenal before. And so getting that first trophy, I think, off their backs will be good to alleviate some of that pressure. So that's why I think Arsenal really need to take the FA Cup and the Carabao Cup very seriously this season, because if you win one of those, it gives you something to cling on to, something that, like, okay, now we can challenge for bigger things, but you also take a little bit of that pressure off, because people are going to expect Arsenal to win silverware, and I think they need that. But those are the expectations that we can talk about amongst each other, and not always succumb to the rival expectations that are so far-fetched and ridiculous that it's just like, no, I personally don't think Mikel Arteta should be sacked if we don't win the Premier League or the Champions League next season. I think his position at the club is pretty secure, and I think a lot of people are really comfortable with Mikel Arteta, but silverware is definitely something that I'm expecting. So whether that's the FA Cup or the Carabao Cup or the Premier League or whatever, I expect that, but it doesn't necessarily have to come in the form of the Champions League or the Premier League. And making sure that we stay in the Champions League, like, I don't want to go back to the Europa League, right? But we'll have those conversations. AFC Max, thank you so much for your super chat. Says, hey, Jess, I've waited for news and prayed for days like this, such as Rice and Timber. And by the way, the Timber song has gone up on views by 2 million since the signing. I'm not surprised. I mean, it's one of the most annoying songs. When that Timber song first came out, if you're talking about the actual Timber song, like, I don't know, which song are you talking about? Because if you're talking about the song that Arsenal used, I don't know. But the Timber song has been in my head for like so many days. The Kesha Pitbull song, like, and I hated it when it first came out. So annoying. But now I'll always attribute that song to him. It's weird. But we'll talk about the individual transfers as well, because in light of like the Declan Rice signing, which is a massive signing and the biggest in our history, and definitely, I think is the most exciting. Timber is a very, very good signing, and I think we need to spend a little bit of time just talking about what he's going to bring to Arsenal, because defensive depth and quality is something that was really kind of the end of our title challenge, and so I think we've rectified some of that by bringing him in, for sure. iGamer says, no more of that whoa cup nonsense, please. Bailey says, how do you see the team lining up next season? I actually have a video coming out on Monday, saying how could Arsenal line up next season. So I won't spoil it, but look out for that video. It's going to come out on Monday. Super excited about that. Boy says, Timber is an incredible signing right out of the FIFA career mode. I have to be honest with you guys, I don't play FIFA, and I feel a little fraudulent because I don't play FIFA. Like, I don't. If I do play video games at all, like, I don't know. I grew up on Nintendo, and so like I play Mario Kart and stuff like that. Like, that's kind of like more my vibes. Like, I don't play FIFA, but this season I am going to get into playing Football Manager. I think that's more my speed. Don't kill me. Don't kill me. Kashimomo says, big up Jess, putting in good work. Hope Arsenal sign like 2 more players. I don't think we're done. I definitely don't think we're done. Jasper says, I'm actually very happy with Timber and Havertz signings. Will go a bit under the radar because of Rice. So yeah, let's talk about the Timber signing a little bit, because it's just like, I'm very excited for Declan Rice, but I think Timber is probably my favorite signing because of this window so far. Because one, I love defensive signings. Like, I think defensive core, keeping the ball out of the back of the net, is something that I am very big on. I think Arsenal being so leaky at the back end of last season was very alarming to my psyche because it was just not something that I've known of Mikel Arteta since he's been here. And so there's definitely some things that needed to happen in order to keep that from happening again. And I think, we had many conversations around Rob Holding, and I don't want to rehash it because this is not to bash Rob Holding at all. But the level of the players that are going to be options needed to go up. They need to be able to play the way that we play so that the buildup from the back and the foundations that have been built are not eroded because of one injury or two injuries. And Timber definitely does that. He's one of the best ball playing center backs. Dogs barking. He's one of the best ball playing center backs in Europe. And he's young, but he's experienced and he's versatile and he offers something a little bit different to Ben White. So, being able to replace Rob Holding with Timber is such an upgrade. Like, it's an insane upgrade. I don't know if you guys, I know you guys remember because it wasn't that long ago, but there was a period where, we had Socrates and Mustafi back there. And no offense to him, but like Bellerin and Kolasinac and Cedric, it was bad. And so going from that to Gabriel and Saliba and Kivior and Ben White and now adding Timber, it's just a dream. Like, it really is. And it makes Arsenal a lot more of a formidable force in multiple competitions, and getting the substitutions or the rotations right is what Arteta needs to work on. I saw, from, I think it's JJ Bull, that does the breakdowns on Tifo, the Athletic Tifo channel. And he did the video on Jurrien Timber and like what he'll bring to Arsenal. And he had the numbers up for like Manchester City and how many starts or appearances they made. Sorry, somebody's leaving. How many starts they made versus Arsenal. And you could see that like Zinchenko, Gabriel, Saliba, and White has started like almost every single game, and everybody else had like single-digit starts. Where City, everybody had like, of course, like some of the players like down at the bottom, like Laporte only had like 11 or something starts. But you saw that they really spread those starts across those players. Now, Man City have an embarrassment of riches. So you could make the argument that like Pep just has better players. But I've always said that I feel like we were a little bit gaslit into thinking that like Tierney and Tomiyasu and these guys couldn't do a job. We didn't really see Kivior come into the team until we had to play him. So I think Arteta, like, he has players that he's either signed, re-signed, and he feels comfortable with. So we should see periods where maybe Ben White comes out of the team and Timber plays a run of games. We see Saliba come out and Ben White plays for him a couple of games. You see Gabriel come out and Kivior plays some games. And so that's what I'm really looking forward to, is because now we have the depth necessary to do that. And they're going to obviously be tasked to play loads of matches, but Arteta needs to figure out a way to keep everybody fresh. And I think only bringing in players when you have injuries, only bringing in players when it's enforced, and then they only play one game every once in a while, that doesn't help keep everybody fresh and switched on. And so Timber definitely gives us the ability to do that, on top of the fact that he's just a really, really good footballer. He's very, very technically gifted. He's right in line with the footballing IQ and the technical ability that Arteta has brought in since being manager. And so I'm super excited about Timber. I do think he will creep into the starting 11. I don't think it's going to be like as soon as he steps in, he's going to start. But I do think he's somebody that's going to really push for a starting position at some point. And like, I'm excited about that. I really am. I'm gassed. I am gassed. I can't lie. Boy says Arteta has no excuse this season to not rotate the squad with confidence. I agree. Jeff says it also keeps them hungry, fighting for his place. And that's important. I think anybody at Arsenal needs to feel like they back themselves to beat anybody to their position. And anybody who just wants a starting position and doesn't want to have to fight for it should not be playing for Arsenal. And so like one of the people that looked the best in preseason so far, and I know it was only one game, but you could see who was fresher than others. I thought Ben White was probably our best player on the day against Nuremberg. And he's probably going to have the most competition because Timber is going to definitely like Declan Rice comes straight in and is going to start. Like, I think that's just the truth. Like, he'll come in and start. But Timber is going to be fighting for a position against Ben White. And Ben White looked really fresh and really up for it. And I think that level of competition is something that we haven't had in a long time. And I'm so ready for it. Like, I'm excited to see how they both deal with it. James says, I hope that Arteta stops using 2 separate 11s and rotates 2 or 3 a game so that the squad is always strong and everyone remains confident and cohesive. Exactly. Like, that's exactly that. Like, the 2 different 11s, it's something that maybe he felt like he needed to do in order to make sure that we secured that top 4 spot this time around, because he just doesn't trust certain guys in the team. But this time around, it wouldn't hurt to, like, put a couple of different players in there, every once in a while, like you said, in order to keep them fresh and give them a chance to play in the Premier League. I think when it was the Europa League or Premier League, it was very obvious that the Europa League was not something that we were taking seriously. The FA Cup as well. The only thing we were taking really serious was the Premier League. So I think guys wanted to feel like if they played in the other games and they did well, that they had a chance to play in the Premier League, and they didn't. And that's something that needs to change. I think guys that come in and play in the Premier League should, if they play well, they should keep their space or keep their spot. And we just didn't have that last season at all. Tony says White was just gliding around. He really was. I think besides Saka, like Martinelli as well, but I think everybody rated Martinelli from like day one. I think when you look at players that are really taken on to, like, if you had to say what an Arteta player looks like, I would say probably Ben White is the best example of it. He can play center back. He can play right back. Arteta's added layers to his game. He's really confident on the ball. He's athletic. He just has all the tools to be whatever. So, Ben White for me he's one of my favorite Arsenal players, but I also think he's not one of Arteta's favorites, but yeah, one of Arteta's favorites for sure. But that didn't stop Arteta from bringing somebody else in, which I love. Adowu says, I love the understanding between White and Saka. Yeah, I mean, in terms of, that balance and that connectivity and that, like, Odegaard, Ben White, and Saka, that triangle it clicks so well. And Ben White, learning the right back position. I think early on he was doing well, but he had to learn how to overlap and when to do it and to get into the final third. And I think at the back end of last season, he really showed that he had a kind of like a knack for making those late runs into the box. He got a couple of goals. He had a couple of assists. And so Ben White is, like, for 50 million, he's been worth that and more. Like, Ben White has been awesome, really. Let's see. Seawalder says, yeah, some respond badly to it. Good to know he can turn up to 11. Let's see. Johnny says, totally agree with Ben White. He's class. Yeah, so, but it didn't stop Arteta from bringing in another player, which I love, because it means even his favorites are going to have to work, like somebody else already said, Kivior looked quite good as well. I am a part of the Kivior fan club. I think he's going to really stand out this season. Like, he's different than Ben White. They have similarities, but I think Kivior has a little bit more in his locker in terms of, like, he can play more of that inverted role, where I think Ben is more of a center back, where Kivior can move into midfield a little bit more. And he just looked good too. Like, he's another one, athletic, versatile, good on the ball. So I think Kivior will play a bigger role too. So yeah, I'm excited. I really am. But Jurrien Timber, like, first of all, the Ajax, what they did for his going away video or his goodbye video, I thought it was absolutely amazing. Like, it just shows that you can have a good relationship with a club when you're selling. And I think having a good relationship with Ajax is good for Arsenal, because they bring players through their academy that play similarly to the way that Arsenal want to play. And so having that pipeline and having a good relationship with Sven Mislintat and Ajax, I think, will be beneficial for Arsenal in the future. During the negotiations, Arsenal were very, I thought, like, not nice, but, they allowed the Timber deal to go into July instead of, June, so that Ajax could use the money from the sale for this summer. And having that understanding and dealing with the team in a calm and like kind way, I think goes a long way in building those relationships, which I all know that we want in the future. And the video that they put out, like, it was so nice. You could just see that they were happy to let him go on these terms, no hard feelings. And I thought Arsenal and Ajax did a really good job. I love the things that he spoke about. He spoke about like a young team developing, something special happening at Arsenal. We all kind of know that and feel that as well. And it's nice to see that somebody feels it from the outside. And I just think it makes sense because, things happen for a reason. Had things gone differently, he'd be a United player right now. And Lisandro Martinez might be an Arsenal player right now, by the way. If Jurrien Timber had went to Manchester United, Lisandro Martinez might actually be an Arsenal player. But it just feels like it worked out for the right reasons. I remember Louis van Gaal was saying, he shouldn't go to Manchester United because he needs to play ahead of the World Cup. And he ended up having a good World Cup, staying for another year, and then leaving to go to Arsenal, which feels like a club that he has a very big affinity for. So I like the things that he said. I like what he brings. And I just, I'm gassed for the signing. I really am. Like, I want a 12 jersey. I really do, because I think he's going to be so good for us. I really do. Deadstone says Ajax brilliant send off. It was so good. It was so nice. Kara says a big up Ajax class. Very, very good. Let's see. Seawalder says there needs to be a compilation of all of White's funnies, like picking grass off of the injured Ramsdale's face and covertly chipping the ball into Odegaard's head. Yeah. Also, when he was taking, like, I don't know if you guys watched the Inside Training, the most recent one, he was taking pictures of Saka. Like, Ben White is hilarious. He really is. So yeah, very excited about Jurrien Timber, and we'll get to see him as soon as probably the MLS All-Star game, which is in DC in the next couple of days. So I'm excited about that. I'm in California, so I won't be at that game, but I'll be watching it, of course. There's 430 of you guys in here. Make sure you guys like this video and subscribe to the channel. Roman says, why are you saying that both Kivior and Timber are competition for White? Why can't they be competition for Saliba and Gabriel if they're as versatile as people claim? Well, I'm not saying that, Kivior and Timber are only competition for White. I'm just saying that, like, I think Kivior is going to do a really good job in that inverted role, but he also can play instead of Gabriel. I feel like I said that. So yeah, I think they'll both challenge. Like, I think White and Kivior could both challenge Saliba and Gabriel. Like, they'll all challenge each other. Like, I feel like I said Kivior, play center back as well. Like, I felt like that. Like, if I didn't say it, yeah, of course. It's not just only competition for White. Like, that's not what I'm saying. That's not what I meant. If that's what I did say, I don't even remember. Boy says Kivior is competition for Gabriel Magalhaes. He is competition for Gabriel, but you can already see that he's in some ways he might end up playing left back as well. So, and I actually really like that for him, because I like when Arsenal play with like bigger fullbacks, and Kivior can offer that. If Zinchenko is not the right option, having somebody else that can invert but gives us more defensive solidity and a little bit more height, that doesn't hurt. So yeah, but I think it's like it's like obvious that White and Kivior are the backup left and right center backs, but they also offer something unique in the fullback positions, which I love. Dami, thank you so much. Says, great work, Jess. Love your shows and your cameos on the Football Terrace. Such a smart and beautiful. Much love. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. I really appreciate that. But yeah, super exciting. So, Rice, what a signing. I mean, I'm glad to see the back of the saga. Like, let's be real. I was hating it. Especially like the end part. I really hated, because let me just from the beginning, like, I hated the whole thing. I didn't like when we put the first bid in that it was being looked at as like, disrespectful or something like that. Like, if Arsenal genuinely felt like they had the player, which I think that we all know that we did, we had Declan Rice, and they were so confident that they had Declan Rice that they didn't really fear anybody else coming in. So starting off at 120 million, which is what West Ham was originally asking for, would have saw Arsenal ending up having to pay much more. And so I think Arsenal did the right thing by starting off a little bit lower. By the way, Manchester City lowballed RB Leipzig for Gvardiol. Chelsea put in a 60 million pound bid for Caicedo when we know, Brighton want closer to 100. So, lowballing is normal. And the way that Arsenal are being, you know, in the like spoken about in the media as like some jokesters, and like it was ridiculous from minute one, in my opinion. It was all orchestrated by West Ham. And it was just very public, and every little thing was being reported over and over and over again. It was so annoying. But, once we agreed the fee, actually, once Man City dropped out of the race, I was like pretty relaxed from that moment, because then we knew that they just had to deal with us and Arsenal would get it done because it's their primary number one target, and they weren't going to let him go. Um, it was just about dealing with West Ham, who, like always said, like the main reason why it was so difficult was because they have financial issues. They tried to make it seem like Arsenal were the ones that were cheap and didn't have the money, but lo and behold, they're the ones that were on the FFP watch list, and so they needed the money more up front so that they could actually buy players in this window. And I thought Arsenal probably did their best to accommodate them, but also make sure that they got things on their own terms. And we ended up spending, the 100 million, but it's worth it to get the player that you really want. If you really believe in that player, which it feels like Arsenal really do. Um, and then so finally getting it done just feels so good. And to see the smile on his face, you can tell he's gassed. He's excited to be at Arsenal. And he said all the right things. I like what he said in his interview. We spoke about, why would he choose Arsenal over Manchester City? And I thought it was quite simple. Players are different. They have different agendas. Some players just want to go to the best teams, and because they know that those teams are just going to win trophies. And so it's like, it's done. You could just go to Man City and be a part of something that's already going, or you could go to Arsenal and be one of the biggest reasons why Arsenal get back to the club that they should be. And I always kind of felt like Declan Rice was probably that person. Obviously, being in London is important, but that's not the only thing. If he really wanted to go to Manchester City, he wouldn't have cared about just staying in London, because it's a 4 hour, drive. It's an hour long flight. Like, if you really wanted to go Manchester United, you would. So I think London was a bonus, but not the main factor. I think being like having Mikel Arteta be so adamant about bringing him to the club and what his role would be, and knowing that the project is going to be built around him and he could potentially be a captain, all those things are important to a player like Declan Rice. So, it's a transformative signing, I think, for Arsenal, because he'll transform the way that we play. And then off the pitch, it gives you a little bit of status. Most expensive, you know, British signing. I think that's what everybody is calling it. Like I said, the British record transfer earlier, and I think people thought I meant the most expensive signing bought by an English team. That's not what I meant. Most expensive British player, which is Declan Rice. They try to say is Jude Bellingham, but Jude Bellingham actually went for cheaper than Declan Rice. So it gives you a little bit of status in that in that. It shows that Arsenal are serious and all that kind of stuff. So there's soft factors involved with that. The outside looking in of like Arsenal beating out Manchester City and other big clubs to a player like Declan Rice. And then just what he gives you in terms of like his ball winning ability, his interceptions, things like that. He's a very combative player. He gives you a little bit of that steal. And it's not that Thomas Partey doesn't give you that. I think Thomas Partey, what his best attributes are what he does on the ball. Where Declan Rice, a lot of the really good things that he does is sometimes off the ball, which is important. And he's a natural leader, which I think Arsenal don't necessarily always have. With Xhaka leaving, it's more important than ever to bring in somebody that has a natural leadership about them. And it's just, yeah, it's just one of those things where, you have potentially England's next captain, potentially. You've broken a record, you've broken your own record, and you've beaten out other good teams to a really big signing. And he just happens to be a top player. It's just a really good day for Arsenal Football Club. Yeah, so I'm loving it. P. Trim says, let's see, the guy is a natural leader. Exactly. Which I love. Arsenal have really kind of like lost that leadership aspect. Big personalities. I think right now some of our players are kind of growing in that space. I think Gabriel is showing himself to be quite a leader. I think Saka and Martinelli lead in their own way. They're not necessarily leaders with what they say, but I think they're happy being the players that carry the burden of scoring the goals, getting the assists, being the main guys up front. But in terms of you have Odegaard who kind of leads a little bit silently, but you need at least 3 or 4 real leaders in the team, I think. So Declan Rice is definitely going to go a long way, I think, in that retrospect, because Arsenal just haven't had that in a long time. Let's see. LJ Brown says, I'm hoping Partey stays and Sambi goes and we could get Lavia. Well, if Partey stays, then there's no point in getting Lavia. So it's either Partey stays or Partey goes and he's replaced by somebody else. And so, yeah, I think Sambi goes no matter what, but I don't think there's a world where you have Jorginho, Rice, Partey, and Lavia. You'll probably have 3 players that can play in that 6 role. And, maybe it's Partey, maybe it's somebody else. So yeah, Roman says, I'm just so happy Rice won a trophy before coming. It's funny because as annoying as West Ham were during that entire, ordeal, the whole Declan Rice deal, I thought that, most Arsenal fans were actually very happy for them to win that Europa Conference League trophy. Usually, as if you don't like your rivals, you don't want them to win shit, and I think that's how Arsenal don't really view West Ham as a rival per se, because most of us were really happy for them to win that trophy, where they were very bitter to see their captain go to Arsenal. It was a very uncomfortable place to be for a couple of weeks. So yeah, Not Focal says some people are dying inside watching Arsenal improve. LOL. Yeah, exactly. It's not fun to watch, rivals get better, so I can imagine people are annoyed by it. Jeff says, whilst you're back in the States, can we give it to Matt Turner's heroics? Maybe he didn't go all the way, but he proved how good he really is. You guys know I'm a fan of Matt Turner, not just because he's American, but because I just think that a number 2 goalkeeper is what he is. And, I think he's a good character, a good guy, and I think he's a good number 2, and a number 2 is kind of just a guy. They don't really challenge the number 1. I think some Arsenal fans have tried to rewrite what a number 2 goalkeeper is. They don't ever really challenge the number 1. But something that Matt Turner does have in his locker that could be maybe beneficial to Arsenal next season is if we do get into a penalty shootout, you might want to bring Matt Turner in because he's very good at it. C. Wilder says, I'm completely indifferent whether Partey stays or goes. Besides the off-field, he can't be relied upon on multiple levels. He's not a good building block. I just think without having to go into everything, Thomas Partey just cannot be our most important player next season if he is here, because he can't be relied upon. But that doesn't mean that he can't be a valuable member of the squad. So, I would if he ended up being an option, that's great, and a very high quality option. Like, I'm not saying like he's El Neni, like he's just an option. I'm saying, you know, um, kind of like the scenario that we've always spoke about, where you bring in somebody and then your starter becomes, goes to the bench kind of thing. But he just can't be relied upon as your most important player. Your most important players are always available. They don't have these like mental kind of like collapses in the middle of very important games. And we've just seen too many of those from Thomas Partey. And so, yeah, I think bringing in Declan Rice actually takes a lot of pressure off of Thomas Partey to be our most important player. And then because he never was that at Atletico either. He never was the most important player. It was Saul and Koke and these guys that were kind of like leading the team. And he was a part of it. And maybe that's what Thomas Partey just needs to be, a part of a team, a high quality player that's a part of a team, but not somebody that's relied upon to be your best player. He can't fulfill that role. He can't. Leopold says Partey may have fewer injuries with the arrival of Rice. I mean, it's kind of like the Tierney effect where, Tierney was a lot more available because Zinchenko was there, but it's because he wasn't playing 38 games. Um, but I still think there's a role that Thomas Partey could play. I'm definitely not like trying to kick him out the door. I do think that his off the field issues are something that one should not be ignored and two need to be resolved. But if for some reason those were resolved and Arsenal were unable to move him on, then if he stayed, I wouldn't be totally upset with that because it's like he's still a very, 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 very good player on his day. He just can't be relied upon to be the best guy that we have out there, and it is what it is. Now, Dennis says people aren't ready for Arsenal 10 years of dominating the league. The only way I see Arsenal dropping is if Arteta leaves. Hopefully that's no time soon. Hopefully. Let's see. And the thing is, the whole, in light of everything that's happened with, Mendy and stuff like that, I do think, there is a misconception around what being innocent truly is. And, I think that's why we have to be careful about like, being acting like we know more than we actually do. Um, from my perspective on Thomas Partey, it's like if he were to be cleared of everything, then it's something that I would just have to accept. Because I don't actually know everything. I wasn't in the courtroom. I don't have all the evidence. I don't understand. I just saw a couple of screenshots and I just saw what was written. So if he was cleared of everything, then it is what it is. But if he ends up not being cleared, then, of course there's he has, he has to go. And I think that would be a given, like he wouldn't be able to play. But I think because he's being looked at as somebody that could potentially move clubs, especially move to like Saudi, that there's probably a big chance that he won't be charged. So there's that. But I also am very reluctant to say that that means that he's innocent, even though he would be innocent, even though I would have to accept that he was the charges are dropped, if that makes sense. It's a tough subject to talk about. It's not something that feels comfortable to me. I think when I'm speaking about my football, I just want to speak about my football. I don't necessarily want to add these personal elements into it because everybody feels differently about it and has different, viewpoints on it, which I try to accept and respect. But, this is Arsenal and Arsenal is more important than Thomas Partey. And if he were to go, I don't think we would collapse. And so let's just see how it unfolds. Um, you know, let's just see how it unfolds. Um, so yeah, but super excited about, what the midfield is going to look like, how they gel, how Rice kind of gels with the rest of the team. We'll see him play very soon. How he adapts to being such an expensive player as well, because there's always that little bit of like is he gonna live up to the price tag? Is it gonna, mess with his mind? We look at players like, Jack Grealish, it took him like a whole season to kind of get his feet underneath him. Albeit, I'm not sure that was just the price tag. I think that was adapting to Pep's system. But you look at like Jadon Sancho came for a really big price tag and hasn't been great at Manchester United, has really struggled. And so big money signings have not always been hits. And so Declan Rice will have to really step into that and kind of like be that guy, because that price tag is going to, make him have to be that very quickly, because people are going to be so desperate to tear him down at the first sign of like him not being amazing. But one thing that I think Arsenal fans have to remember as well is that Declan Rice, we've spent a lot of money on him, but he's not the finished article. I think when I look at Declan Rice, I see a very, very, very good player that still needs he needs a little sharpening, a little, molding. He's not 100% there yet, I don't think. I think he needs some work on his build up, being in a possession-based side. And so I think there'll be some growing pains with him at the beginning. So we'll see how quickly he adapts. I don't think that's a bad thing for Arsenal, because we started really fast out of the gate and I think we petered off. If Arsenal can win games while players are adapting and we kind of grow into the season, I think that actually might be better for us. But yeah, we'll see how it goes. But a great player, but definitely not the finished article just yet. So we'll see. Tony says our team has a lot of big money, big hype players. The team and the staff can help Rice manage expectations and focus just on his game. He needs to focus. That's just the truth. Like, going from West Ham to Arsenal as our record signing and the most expensive British player is going to come with very high expectations. And so it's that instant, like, you have to be perfect, from minute one from the outside. But if they have their own expectations from the inside and he focuses on that, then I think he'll be great. If he lets the outside get to him, then he could be in trouble. So yeah. Let's see. Levi says Rice will hit the ground running. Hope so. Deadstone says Rice still has levels to go. Under Moyes, he was restricted. I think under Southgate and Moyes, he's very, like you said, restricted and needs he needs development. But the raw attributes are just there, and it's so obvious. And it's not like raw like Tavares or anything like that. It's somebody that's just kind of on the cusp of being probably world class, but just needs a little bit more coaching to get there, which I think a lot of the players that we have are kind of there. Like Saka and Martinelli, I think if they have really good campaigns in the Champions League this season, will in the league will be world class. Like, I think they're right on the cusp of that, as well as Odegaard. So, it's just about being in the right environments, being in the right situations, playing on the biggest stages and delivering, and having a coach that can help you deliver that. And they definitely have that with Arteta. They're all kind of on the cusp, really. But he definitely has levels to go. Deadstone says Rice said it himself that he didn't realize how big Arsenal is until he signed. Yeah, it's big, buddy. Jordan says, I think Rice is a player that will thrive under pressure. That's important, because Arsenal, there's constant pressure and expectation to win. And you're not stepping into a team that's already winning. You're stepping into a team that's going to be looking at you as a big reason why we start winning, if that makes sense, amongst the other players. But, you're the catalyst for it. So yeah, it's a lot. But I think he's going to do well. Like, I have very little, I'm not worried about it. I'm a little bit if I had to say the signing that I'm more worried about, it would be Kai Havertz, because, you're rehabilitating a player that's really went off the boil for 3 years. And, can he kind of get to a point of playing at a very high level, very consistently, in a position that we haven't seen him play that often for Chelsea. So that signing for me is more risky than Declan Rice at 100 million, even though I still believe that Havertz will work out. If I had to say which signing I'm a little bit ooh, just, let's see how this goes, it's more Havertz than Rice for sure. So yeah, James Bitter says, I would almost love to face Madrid in the Champions League. Would be a great measure of where Arsenal are amongst the best in Europe. no. Um, yes, I want to play the best, but like maybe like not right away. I think Real Madrid are going to be a problem. They're going to get Mbappe. Like, and everybody that's like, obviously, nothing is funnier than when you put something in a title or something like that, and you're definitely like in jest. And everybody that knows me knows that I don't think we're going to get Mbappe, but I see that there's people just in there like, you're not getting Mbappe. I know that. Relax, calm your tits. I know. But if they get Mbappe, which they probably will, on top of Bellingham and Camavinga and Chouameni, and they keep their other players, like Real Madrid are going to be insane next season. So, yeah, I would like to avoid them for as long as possible. And it's pretty like obvious we're going to get Bayern Munich or Barcelona in the Champions League. It's kind of obvious, So, yeah, we'll see. But yeah, it's kind of talking about preseason a little bit. I was in the air flying, when we played Nuremberg. And so I didn't actually get to see it live, but I actually did go back and rewatch. And, I thought it was a typical like first preseason game where guys are rusty. You have a bunch of guys that come back off of loan that you're not really that excited to see, but they need minutes, like Cedric. And then you have some kids that are involved. And it's just a time to kind of like knock the dust off a little bit. And I was a little bit, am I going to lie and say I'm surprised? No, but the overreaction to it, I thought, especially after watching it, it was obvious that in the first half we were quite, it looked like Arsenal. We looked like ourselves, obviously a rusty Arsenal, but we looked like ourselves. We should have scored more goals. And in the second half, when it became more disjointed and more the kids came on, we weren't as good. And then Nuremberg, like fluke goal from Hein trying to pass the ball into Jorginho, and it just wasn't that deep. But people, I felt, overreacted to it like they always do. And it's just like, it's not that deep. It's a preseason game. But some of the things that stood out to me in that game, in particular, like Kivior was something that really stood out to me. I thought he looked really good. Like I already said, he's a player that I really like. And I think, we probably should have started using a little bit earlier last season, but that's neither here nor there anymore. But I hope he gets more minutes because I think he's really a quality player and will offer something good on that left-hand side, whether that's, instead of Gabriel playing or, instead of Zinchenko playing. I think he offers something. Noweri and Mile Lewis Skelly, I thought, you take an opportunity to really, show what you can do. I thought they did that. They play the Arsenal way. They're such like obvious, like Arsenal Academy kids that just know how to play in that way, very comfortable on the ball, confident. I thought they really stood out when they came on. I would have liked to see more of Mile Lewis Skelly, but, in the limited time that they had, I think they made the most out of it, which is great. Really glad we got Noweri on a new contract because he's definitely one for the future. You can definitely see him playing sooner rather than later. But I think they really stood out. Saka looked like his normal self, which is great because, Saka, he's one of our most important players. And I thought, Balogun was okay. Maybe he was one of the players that I was hoping for a little bit more from. But again, he played in that second half where it got kind of disjointed and we didn't have, he wasn't playing, like that second half was a little, was a little disjointed. Like it just wasn't the same as the first half. So I can't really blame him for that. So I can't make like a huge, like, should we keep or should we sell Balogun? I think my feelings are quite the same, despite what happened with in Nuremberg. Like, I think, we'll probably sell him, which won't be the worst thing if we get a big fee. Yeah, like that's, I still kind of feel the same unless he does something really special on the US tour. I think it's probably going to just be that. I think Fabrizio Romano did say that his future would be sorted a little bit later on in the window because the big strikers will go first, Harry Kane, the bigger names will kind of go first, and then people will maybe be looking at Balogun as somebody to replace those guys. So it gives us enough time to see what Balogun has. And, if he's somebody that Arsenal will change their feelings on and keep. But, my feelings are kind of the same off of the back of the Nuremberg game because there just wasn't much in it to make me think that like, oh no, we need to do something different. Um, yeah, but there wasn't much in it. It was the same as I felt about the first Nuremberg game, even though that result was a little bit different. I just think it's disjointed. Nuremberg came in and had 5 games under their belt. This was our first game. They were rusty. It is what it is. Um, so yeah, I don't feel any different about Eddie than I did before. Um, so yeah, Arca says Balogun looks raw, reminds me of a young Suarez. Not saying he's going to be that good. I think one of the not the worst things that could have happened with Balogun, but I think that athletic tifo thing that came out that was comparing him statistically to Harry Kane. People say like it's not statistically that he's most similar to Harry Kane, is he's like going to be Harry Kane or something like that. And so the hype is great. Like I think that hyping our players is fine, but I still think there's like an unrealistic thing around Balogun where they're thinking that he's like, this ready-made striker to start. Like I've seen people say you should start ahead of Jesus. I just think that's bullshit. So Balogun for me is somebody that, you know, nothing has really changed. At all, to be honest. Michael says, if the 2 academy mids continue to have a good preseason, what would you want them for the upcoming season? Bench, loan, continue in the under 18? I mean, I think they can continue doing what they're doing in the academy. I mean, I wouldn't rush to do anything. If anything, I'd loan. I think Arsenal are going to be under a significant amount of pressure. And when you think about players that have come through young, in particular, like let's say Cesc Fabregas, Wilshere, Saka, I think those players were just one of a kind. And so I don't necessarily feel like as good as Noeri and Malu Skelly are, I don't actually think we need to rush to bring them into the first team this season. I think we're going to be under way too much pressure. There's the squad positions need to be filled up with guys that are going to really make a difference. And so that also brings into light, the Fabio Vieiras and ESRs as well, because they need to have really good preseasons and really show, because every single squad spot is going to be so important next season. So I wouldn't rush. If anything, I'd loan them out, but I think they can stay in the academy and do what they're doing now. No real, I think rush to do anything with either one of them. I think they're in the academy and that's where they should be. Despite how talented I think that they are. Paul says Trusty had a good game. Thoughts? I think Trusty is a good player, and I want to see Arsenal do more of this, where they bring in players that aren't necessarily for Arsenal or Arsenal's first team, but they loan them out and then sell them for a profit. And I think that's what will happen with Trusty. He has a lot of teams looking at him. I don't necessarily think that there's a big like a spot for him in the squad. Because we brought in Timber, we have Kivior, we have quite a few players that can play the center back position. So I don't necessarily feel like Trusty is somebody that we need to have in the team, but I would like to see Arsenal do more of that, buy players with the idea that, you're going to develop them a little bit and then sell them on for profit. But I do like Austin Trusty. I just don't think he's Arsenal quality, but I think he's a good player. Deadstone says, Jess, with Kai coming in, where do you think Smith Rowe is playing position-wise? I actually don't understand what we're going to do with, the abundance of attacking midfielders that we have. It feels like we have like 3 DMs and 4 attacking mids. We could probably use with just a center midfielder, like somebody that we could probably use like just a midfielder, that's not overly attacking or overly defensive. And we could use with that, because we have a kind of 3 or so guys that are a little bit more geared towards the attack part of the game, but you don't necessarily want them receiving the ball off of, your defenders. You don't necessarily trust them as much in build up, so maybe you could do with more of somebody like that. But I don't necessarily understand what's going to happen with Emile Smith Rowe, Vieira in light of Kai Havertz coming in. I think bringing in players on top of them makes me feel like their positions are in question. And I'm somebody that really likes Fabio Vieira and wants to see him do well. But I always maintain the fact that like he has to have a really good preseason and he really needs to show what he can offer. And I think, I don't take much from the Nuremberg game, but I still feel like people are wanting more from him. So with Emil Smith Rowe, I'm not quite sure. Maybe he can play right wing. Because I still view Emil Smith Rowe as somewhat more of a creative forward than a midfielder. So maybe that's more what Arsenal are looking at. He's an interesting one because for the under 21s, I thought, again, he kind of played more off of the wing. And I actually think that's where he's best because he's not necessarily a great passer. Not that he's a bad passer, but he's not a volume passer. He's not a tempo setter, and he's not somebody that you want receiving the ball in the middle third. You want him in the final third. And so he's great like in short little passes, 1-2 touches, wall passes, in the half spaces, and then one touch finishes. And I think that lends itself more to the forward position than the number 8. So I could see Emil Smith Rowe playing like a forward position, but with Trossard coming in and Nelson signing a new deal and Kai Havertz coming in, and Fabio Vieira there, I don't really understand where Emil Smith Rowe is going to get his minutes from. So there's definitely that. So I guess my answer to the question is I have no freaking idea. Johnny says, will Havertz step in if Jesus gets injured? Better than Nketiah, but not a goal scorer. Definitely need another top draw striker. Why is no one talking about this? I think the reason why the striker position is not being spoken about is because I think a lot of us, I know I feel like this, and a lot of people I talk about this is that I speak to feel this way as well, is that big signing comes next summer. That big striker signing comes next summer. I think it's the natural progression. I think with what we've already done, and, we scored so many goals last season. We don't have a goal scoring problem. Like, I don't think we need that striker right now. It would be nice because it would kind of complete things, but we need to sort the midfield first, get the depth going. And what we have going up top right now works. We don't need to really disrupt it just now. So I think Jesus will get another season of being our number one striker, which I know people don't like because they don't feel like he scores enough goals. But we have players that score goals. Saka and Martinelli score loads of goals, and they'll score more goals next season. And that's what Arsenal, I think, are banking on. So I think people aren't talking about it because, one, the media has kind of put a damper on the striker conversation. And it feels like the natural progression of the team to buy a world-class striker maybe next summer, because we've already spent 200 million and we still have some maybe uncertainties in midfield. Maybe you need another fullback. It's just, yeah, I think that's the natural progression of things. But it's not something that I have a lot of anxiety around, because I feel like we'll score quite a bit of goals. Yeah, it's something that we need. We need a lot of things. Like Arsenal need a lot of things, but there's priorities and then there's things that are kind of marked down for the future. And I think a big striker signing is marked down for the future. So we'll see. And it could be the case that maybe we start the season and maybe, if things aren't going well, maybe Arsenal look to bring in somebody in January. But the way that we score goals, the way that we create chances, I don't actually think we have a goal scoring problem. But in terms of, will Havertz step into that number 2 position? Like if something happens to Jesus, probably. He has the ability to do so. Trossard has the ability to do so. And the way that we play right now, that player isn't a volume striker. That player is more of a number 10. And our strikers are Saka and Martinelli. That's so obvious to me. It's the Liverpool template of years gone by with Mane and Salah and Firmino. And it's no different for us. I feel like people just want a striker because it makes them feel more comfortable. But I actually trust Martinelli and Saka to keep up their goal scoring form. And I think others will chip in. Yeah. Arca says Jesus disrespect is wild. There's no affordable striker on the market who is good enough. I think it's about timing too. Like we don't, Arsenal probably have an idea of who's going to be available next summer. And by the looks of it, Osimhen could be, available next summer. Evan Ferguson could be available next summer. And so sometimes it's all about timing, and maybe you bring in somebody like that next summer. But yeah, I think we can win. Like, people are like, we're never going to win a Premier League title with Jesus up top. But I'm sorry, we would have won the Premier League this season with him playing as a striker and Nketiah stepping in for him, in December, had we been able to defend at all at the end of the season. I think our issue was more defensively than attack. We're scoring almost 2-3 goals a game. Like, we shouldn't have to score 3 or 4 goals to win a game. Our issue was defense. So, I think we could wait until next summer, even though people are desperate to bring it in now, because I think what we tend to do is look at the things that are going to potentially hurt us. And they're like, okay, well, we need that striker. But what's going to hurt us more is if we don't figure out what's going on midfield wise. And if we don't have the depth in defense, I think that would hurt us more. So yeah. Boy says, Jesus Christ, dude, this guy is looking for nightmare porn or something. It's only at Arsenal from here on. Go get it quick. I don't know what you guys are talking about. Probably shouldn't have clicked on that. Yeah. So, Ian says, can you see my messages? I'm new to the channel. Thank you so much for joining the channel. I really appreciate it. Yes, I can see you. Kabunso says, you can relax when you stock up the rice. Johnny J says, Arsenal are waiting for Kane to be available for free next season. I understand like that. That's what, especially because Man City bought a striker, so we need to buy a striker. I think we need to focus on ourselves. And right now, Arsenal's main issues are making sure they have depth in defense, make sure that they have the right midfield to take us forward. And then they'll probably look at the attacking options. Maybe another winger comes in. Quite frankly, I don't like the winger market. I'm very kind of indifferent about all the players we've been linked to in those positions, because I don't think any of them really move the needle. I think the guy was probably Rafinha. And because we can't get him, I think Arsenal will kind of see if there's anybody, but there's no point in bringing in somebody that's not going to be able to challenge Saka truly. It's a waste, especially because people want so much for wingers. So yeah, we'll have to see what happens with that. But I think Arsenal are looking at things. I think there's names we haven't heard of before or haven't been kind of put out there in the media. So we'll just have to wait and see. But a striker is not something that I actually think will happen in this window. But we'll see. We'll see. We will see. Boston said Kai will be slotting deeper, allowing Martinelli to come more inside, hence more goals, presumably 20, which is the target. And, I was talking to somebody earlier that was saying, well, why was Kai Havertz playing left wing? He wasn't. He was playing wider, and Eddie was pinched more in, like you're saying. And I think we have to accept the dynamics will probably change, as they've always changed every summer. Every summer we've added a new layer. We've changed a little bit of something. It wasn't like we could have envisioned what Zinchenko was going to do for us. It was something new that was added in, and the dynamics changed. And I think the dynamics inevitably will change with 2 midfielders coming in. And so we just have to wait and see how it pans out. The last thing I want to kind of talk about too is just Lavia has been linked again. Ben Jacobs has said that Arsenal could join the race for Lavia if Thomas Partey were to go. And I've been seeing, some reports out there that Thomas Partey has agreed personal terms with a Saudi club, and that they're trying to, convince him to go. And so I think there are very, real possibilities that Thomas Partey could leave. Now, Lavia, he's young, he's very good, and probably in a year or so, he'll be just as good as Caicedo and Tchouaméni and these guys. But man, he's young and he's kind of raw. When I say raw, when I'm saying Rice was a little raw, Lavia is much more raw than that. And I don't think that would be the worst thing, because you have Rice, who's your number one, and then you have Jorginho, and Lavia inevitably is the guy that's cooking underneath the surface. You have a little bit of a buffer because Jorginho is there. But when Jorginho leaves next summer, you already have somebody that's been there. that's been learning. Inevitably, Lavia ends up replacing Sambi Lakanga in in the grand scheme. Like Rice is kind of replacing Partey, Jurrien replaces El Neni, Lavia replaces Sambi. That's how I view it in squad terms. So it's something that I feel like would make people feel uncomfortable because Thomas Partey is experienced, and then so you lose quite a bit of that. Lavia is a really good player, but you know, it's a lot of changes in midfield. It's a lot of changes in midfield. So yeah, it's something that we have to look at. Um, but I'm excited to see how the rest of the window pans out because I feel quite relaxed now that the big things are done. Um, Tony says Lavia comes in to play a simple role and grow into the squad. If you go that route, I'd be excited, and that's what I think it would be as well. Is that it would be Lavia cooking under the surface and Jorginho and Declan Rice playing more of the main roles in that six role, which is not like the worst thing in the world. Dead Stone says Tom Canton of the Gooner Talk says, and he's a writer for Football London, said the Caicedo link to Arsenal is still there if Partey goes. The thing about the Caicedo thing is that like that deal has been that those negotiations have been at a standstill for a couple of weeks. Nothing has really progressed. Nothing has really gone forward with that. And something makes me feel like there's something from the Brighton side that's making them slow down. And that might just be that they're waiting to see what happens with Liverpool and Arsenal and Manchester United because Manchester United situation is a little bit different because they're waiting on the takeover. But Liverpool, if they sell Fabinho and Jordan Henderson or any combination of their two experienced midfielders, you bet your ass they're going to probably look at Caicedo like potentially. And Arsenal should be looking at him as well if they were to lose Thomas Partey. So there's a reason why that deal has not been wrapped up. And I don't think it's because Chelsea are not pushing. I think it might be because Brighton are like, look, if we can wait another week or so, then we can get more teams involved because there's no reason why that deal should just be sitting there at a standstill. But that's just me. But I'm not going to get my hopes up on Caicedo because, yeah, like I think it'll be more of a Lavia, but we'll see how it goes. Let's see. Eddie says, why are we seemingly in a hurry to get rid of Partey? If anything, this might be the best season being that Jorginho can spell him and he does not have to go a full season. Well, we're bringing in Declan Rice, who's going to play the sixth role. And so he'll be starting. And then Arteta really likes Jorginho. So I think there's a little bit of a hierarchy thing here as well. And then Thomas Partey has some things going on outside of, off the pitch that I think have got to be a factor and cannot be ignored. So I think there's a couple of different things there. I think it's mostly that. I think in a dream world, you'd want to just be able to keep everybody. But it doesn't always happen like that. And Arsenal seem to want to really renovate the midfield. And there's wholesale changes happening, and we just have to see if it works out for us. But yeah, I think there's a couple of different reasons why you can see why Arsenal would be interested in maybe moving him on, despite the fan base feeling like it's, feeling uncomfortable with it. I can see why Arsenal are looking at it, to be honest. So yeah, Tony says, I want to keep Partey, but I'd be okay with letting him go because of all the reasons. I hear exactly what you're saying, and that's exactly how I feel. All the reasons, exactly. So we'll see what happens, but you guys have been going for about an hour and a half. I really appreciate you guys popping onto the stream. I know it's not the usual digs, but this is where I'll be for the next 2 weeks or so. I'll keep you guys updated on everything that's going on. I'm going to be doing some workout here with the world or the champion soccer tour, whatever. It's what Arsenal are playing in. And so I'll also be like vlogging my experience going to the Barcelona game, Arsenal versus Barcelona. So that content will be there. And on Monday, there will be a video coming out about like how Arsenal can line up. So there's tons of content. Hopefully you guys are enjoying it. I really appreciate you guys popping on with me. Enjoy the rest of your day. Enjoy Declan Rice Day. Enjoy it all. Take it in. And like this video, subscribe to the channel, and I will see you guys on the next one. Bye, guys.